All right, you guys, so let's go ahead and get this started again for where we left off. So we essentially have already exported our model, at least the geometry that we need from ZBrush, and now we're going to go ahead and import this stuff. So let's, in our Maya with everything open, let's go to File, Import, and I'm simply going to go to where that was. That's Desktop, and yes, I got a cluttered desktop. Select the OBJ that you exported. I'm going to import that, and there it is. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice here is, whoa, this thing is way off. You know, you got to remember Maya's world space and what we were doing in ZBrush. Remember, we're starting with a sphere, right? And that sphere is generated at origin at ZBrush, in ZBrush, right? And we've basically been modeling downward. So hence the reason that this is going underneath the ground plane. For the time being, I want you guys to just ignore the fact that it's like this. Okay, so we're going to basically turn off the grid. We're not going to pay any mind to the fact that it's resting underneath the ground. What we'll essentially do later when we're ready is we're going to basically set this at the proper orientation and then bring it back into ZBrush. But that's a process we'll do later. Okay, so now that we have our model in here, you'll see it's in our outliner. I'm going to go ahead and just rename this something. Let's call this Skin Sculpt, something like that, just to distinguish it. And we're going to basically get started with retopologizing this. Now, there's a few things that I'm going to be very particular about when it comes to retopologizing our characters. You know, everyone's scenario is going to be a little different. There's a couple of you that are dealing with something that's a little more anatomical and organic, as what you see here, a little more muscularity. And there's most of you have something that's relatively simple, okay? And what I mean by simple is, I mean, there's no need to craft any topology that's going to follow any specific forms or anything like that. So it's primarily going to be just kind of tubes that we're going to model out for the limbs and stuff like that. But we're going to spend the majority of our time right now in just the face. And we're going to basically cover in another video doing the body. So for the time being, let's just focus on the head and just really try to get like a good sense of this. And the other thing that this kind of exposes for me is that if we look closely to the head here, if we get really close, if it feels like the resolution of your character is not holding up well enough, like I'm kind of looking at this and feeling like, you know what, this is maybe a little too low res for what I want. This may be a good opportunity to go ahead and export a higher version of your character from ZBrush. So I'm actually going to do that real quick. Let me go ahead and jump back into the other window here. So we're back in ZBrush. I'm going to do this process one more time. So I'm going to turn on the wireframe. I'm going to undo what I did here. Let's go back to Z plugins. Let's just set this number a little higher. So we'll go to maybe around 200,000. Maybe right around there. Okay. Now we'll decimate current. And let me just go a little closer to me. Yeah, that feels a little better there. Okay, cool. So that's a good call. So I'm going to go ahead and re-export this one. There we go. And let me go ahead and jump back in to my other desktop. All right, sweet. So now that I'm back over in Maya, let's remove this guy. And we'll go ahead and import that higher res version. In fact, let's keep this one around just to see if there's a visible difference. So I'm going to bring in that new Batman body. So they're going to just look like they're sitting right on top of each other. This is the new one. I'm going to move it over for a second. And you can see that there's just a better fidelity to the higher res. So if this feels, again, a little too jaggedy, don't use the one that's too jaggedy. Like, try to give yourself something a little healthier. And you can see that this is much better. So we're going to go with that. So I'm going to remove this one. Now let's take this, just place it back at 0. All right, now we're in business. So I'll go ahead and rename this one more time. Skin sculpt. Okay. And first things first, with the geometry selected, what we essentially want to do is make this a live surface. Now, in order to do that, we simply just go up here to the top of the menu, and you're going to see these little magnets right up here, right? The one to the far right, if you hover over it, it basically will tell you what it does. It says make the selected object live. So I'm going to basically activate that. And you'll see that right in here in the text field, it populates what we named our geometry in that text field to signify that it is now an active mesh or a live mesh. If I turn on the wireframe, you can see that it now has this greenish color, and that's to signify, hey, this is basically a live mesh. All right, so now that we have that in place, let's start retopologizing. Now, in order to do this correct, what we're basically going to do is open up our modeling toolkit. So right up here in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see all these different icons. This is to basically turn on our channel box and things like that. Right over here at the far left, you'll notice a button that's basically show or hide a modeling toolkit. I'm going to click on that, and you should see this little tool set pop up within your Maya UI. Let me go ahead and turn a few things off here so it's back to default settings. The first thing we're going to do is with this visible, where you see symmetry, select this little drop down arrow and go ahead and turn this on to either world X or object X, one or the other. Okay, so in this case, I'll probably just use object X. And at this point, we're ready to go. Now, the main tool that we're going to use to do our topology pass is going to be a tool called Quadra, which you can see right over here. It's at the very bottom of the menu items. So I'm going to select that tool. And now what you'll notice is when I hover over the actual mesh, if I start clicking down anywhere on the body here, you're going to see these little green dots get generated. Now, what those green dots signify is essentially a point, you know, something like a vertex. And so I'm going to just remove these real quick, and let's actually get started. So now that we have our object live, we have symmetry turned on right here, and we have Quadra activated. Let's get started. I typically start right along the eyes, okay? And what I'm going to first do with you guys, and this is what's really important, I want you guys to follow along exactly how I start here, because we're going to establish the most important edge loops for your character, and then kind of fill in the blanks from there. So the first one I want to establish in that regard is, in fact, the eyes. So I'll start dropping in some points just to kind of get this eyelid essentially in a good place. Now, even if your sculpt is not perfect, like you can see here on mine, I almost don't even have top eyelids. They're just kind of buried from when I was sculpting this thing. But that's okay. Well, we can always fix that later. So right now, we just want to get the edge loop intact. Now, one thing you'll notice is I went and did 2 rows of corresponding dots. The reason for that is because I need to be able to make or create polygons within these. So in order to do that, now that I have an area of dots that I've essentially created, if I hold down Shift on the keyboard, Maya will basically highlight in blue a polygon that I can go in and now create. Now, in order to create it, all I got to do is tap down, and you can see that I get a new polygon there, and so forth. I can go ahead and continue tapping across where I essentially have these points. Now, really quickly, I'm able to go in and kind of drag out this new, what I like to refer to as poly patches. So let's go ahead and maneuver these. Now, to simply move these points around, I just click down on it. That's it. Just click down on it if you're using a mouse. If you're using a tablet, as I am here, it's simply just pressing down with your stylus just to kind of get it oriented the way you want to. So I'm just going to move these to make sure I have as accurate representation as I can to that. In fact, I may even make this a little more narrow up here, since I got to envision where that little eyelid crease would essentially be. There's our first patch. Now the next patch I like to establish is, of course, in the mouth. And we're basically going to work out our radial patches first. You know, and when I say radial patch, I'm referring to the eye loops or the edge loops that essentially create one nice ring. And these are rings that are established on different landmarks in the face. So the first being the eyes. Now the next one we're going to establish is the mouth. So similarly to what we just did, I'm going to basically start placing some points. Now it's nice to be working symmetrically here because everything should just fall in place on the opposing side. All right. There are a couple of rules that I will talk about in terms of resolution and, you know, just clean habits as far as topology. We'll get into a lot of this good stuff. For right now, let's just get the building blocks in place here. So I'm going to go ahead and start just kind of quickly building out these polygons. So here you can see now I've established a patch, a radial patch along the lips there, along the mouth. That's really important. And the other thing I was kind of being mindful of here, I want to have a clear understanding of where the corner is. So wherever that corner is meant to be, make sure it's really nicely represented, okay? And the other thing we want to do, and this is a rule that's very specific to the mouth and the eyes, and that's to basically have the same resolution on the top of the lip as we have on the bottom lip. And that's true for the eyes as well. So wherever the corners are, and in my case, you can see it's here and here. I want to make sure I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to add one more at the top here. And so that brings me to the next way to kind of use quad draw. How do I insert more resolution on an existing patch? Simply hold down Control. Now, if I hold down Control and hover over any existing patch, you can see that it's kind of highlighting where and how it wants to introduce another edge loop. So in this case, I just want to place one right here. I'll just click down. And now that I have it there, I can just go and real quickly just kind of maneuver everything around just to create kind of more even placement. All right. So that's feeling pretty good. Let's go back down here for a second. I'm actually going to remove some of these edges because I don't really need this many right now as I'm doing this. So just the way I showed you right now how to add them by holding down Control, the way that you remove them is you hold down Control and Shift at the same time, and everything will turn yellow in terms of what you want to delete. If I want to delete, let's say, a face, I can just click down. It's now gone, right? If I want to delete an edge, I can just click on that edge and it's gone. And of course, I can place it right back. So in this case, let me go ahead and remove some edges. I'm going to remove this one here, which means I have to remove one on the top. And I just want to keep this really, really simple. So we'll keep it just like that for now. All right, and let's just kind of maneuver that a little bit. That feels a lot better to work with. Okay, so now that we've squared away our eye patch and essentially our mouth patch, and this is going to expand in a little bit later. Now we're going to do the next most important one to me, which is basically what encompasses the nose and the mouth into one, and also allows us to really understand where that nasolabial fold is. And that's basically this crease that you see here. That's really important for smiling and a lot of facial expressions, correct? So let's go in here and start a point right about there. And if you have any kind of sculpted information that that tend to kind of distinguish that line, I'm just going to follow it. In my case, I do have a little bit of a clear path where I'm trying to go there. So I'm just going to follow that path. And then right up here, I'll just probably just bring all this right to the center. And now let's go ahead and create our second row. And I'm just going to follow all this stuff down. So you can see I'm just creating a nice ring. Now here's a good tip. Good tip. If you hold down Shift, I showed you can just click down, right? But if you just hold down Shift, click down and drag, it'll just create a bunch of polygons at one time. So watch this here. Let me see if I can get a good run here. So right there, it's kind of reaching over. But right here, I'm going to try to just drag out all these polygons. So I'll hold down Shift, click down, and just drag them out. So it's pretty nice way to just drag out really quick a nice row. All right, but here you can see I've established 3 edge loops that are very important for our topology. Now we're going to do the last one that I'm going to look for as far as the iconic edge loops that all of you guys, regardless of style of character, we want to make sure we have represented. The next one is going to basically frame the entire face. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to the top, generate one there, and these polygons will probably be a little broader, but just kind of follow the path that I'm doing here as far as resolution is concerned. And let's go ahead and make an additional row. And what's really cool about this is once we have these basic railroad tracks, I guess is another way to refer to them. Once these are all established, let me just drag these out. We essentially have our blueprint for our face. Okay, so right now, you can see we've established our eye loop, our loop that represents or that encompasses the nose and the mouth, another one for our mouth, and then of course the biggest one that encompasses the face is basically this run. And you know, you'll see that there's a nice benefit to this. It keeps everything relatively isolated, which I really try to do as much as I can with any character. Okay, so now that we have all this established, now it's time to start building outward or filling in the blanks from all of this. So I'm going to take a pass at trying to complete the face here. And if we go a little bit further, I'll even try to complete the head and the neck just for this particular recording. And then, like I mentioned, in a separate one, we'll talk about the body. Okay, so let's go ahead and start doing this. So remember, this is all the same active poly mesh that we've created. Now, if I just got out of quad draw for a second and I just select something like the move tool, you're probably wondering, well, okay, now I deselected, I'm out of quad draw. How do I get back in to basically start doing stuff? Because right now, if I turn quad draw on again, it's not going to recognize the actual existing mesh that I've already did. That one's right here, right? So what you want to do before you turn quad draw on, if you happen to have gotten out of it, make sure that your sculpt is still live, but go ahead and select the new mesh that you were making, which you can see is right here, and then turn quad draw on, and it'll basically continue with that same mesh, okay? All right, so now that we've done that, let's start bridging some of these gaps here. I'm just gonna, real quick, go over here and start kind of massaging the topology to really just follow the flow of the shapes. And my main thing that I'm looking for here, guys, is I'm really just trying to look at the forms that I've sculpted and try to find the best solutions for just creating topology that really flows with that stuff. So you'll notice that every decision I'm making here is really with the mindset of trying to follow the form. All right, let's go over here and start Just bridging some of these together as well. And, you know, of course, we will need more topology at some point here. But we're going to first just make some nice broad strokes. Bring this down over this way. Now, I like to think of this as just good headphone work right here. This is the kind of thing where you can really just put on a good playlist and just have fun doing. At least for me, I kind of enjoy this aspect of modeling. Like once I've done the artistic stuff, it's nice to go in here and basically do a little bit of the technical stuff. Now let's go into this nose and just, again, don't overthink like areas like the nose. Just really try to follow the features more than anything else. If you do that, you're going to be okay. So I'm looking at the nostril itself, and I'm just going to create like a nice ring that just kind of works its way around it. So you can see what I'm kind of doing there. You know, again, just keeping everything relatively straightforward and simple. And we'll go ahead and just continue with this part of the process. Again, just following the form. So what I'm looking at here is basically I have this little sculpted kind of ledge right there along the nostril. And I'm just really trying to be accurate in how I kind of follow that around. And the other thing too is, you know, as you do your pass, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Oftentimes when I'm doing this, I'll try, one way, and if it's not quite working out, then you know what, I just try it a different way. And Quadra is really, really flexible for that kind of thing. So here you can see I'm just following again the flow of this expression. Now, the other thing that is worth mentioning here, clearly this character, you know, is sculpted with an expression in place. So I am being mindful to that. We would neutralize this at some point. For the time being, though, we're going to keep it just like this. Now here you can see I'm just kind of freely adding as much res as I need to make sure I'm filling in all the blanks here. Here's where I have a choice in terms of how do I want to craft this particular area. Well, you know what? I'm not too sure yet, but let's try something. I'm going to come in here with that, and then let's just merge that. Now watch what I just did right there. I'm going to undo this. I basically dragged this point to this one, and it auto welds it. It just goes and does that automatically. That's a super nice feature that Quadra does for you. I'm going to undo that just because I don't really like the solution I'm doing here. So let me try to work out something else. I'm going to bring this down here. Just going to create a little more space. Now again, all of you are going to have different scenarios that you're dealing with here. So you don't have to copy exactly what I'm doing here, but just use this as a guideline in terms of what I'm looking for and what I'm thinking about. So maybe we'll do this. Yeah, let's work with something like that. That feels reasonable. Okay, now you can see that there's areas that I could just, you know, add more resolution. But before I start doing all that, I want to kind of be systematic here. I want to try to find a way to to do this without flooding it with too much res off the bat. So complex areas will require more resolution first, but there's always ways to kind of do this without doing too much. All right. So making progress. Now, for those of you curious, how long does this typically take? I would say this, it's case by case, but as you can see, the process goes pretty quick, so it doesn't necessarily take too long. But you do want to take your time. You don't have to rush through this. Like, I think ideally, you'd be kind of going through here and just really planning out appropriately, keeping the mesh clean. No need to rush. That's all I'm trying to say. It's feeling pretty good up in here as far as like a path. We may try a few different things here. I'm gonna actually get rid of this. And what I think I'm gonna do here is bring this around right to here. Yeah, and then we'll get this kind of ridge defined for this brow here. So what I've essentially done here is I've expanded this whole eye orb into one broader radial patch, which I much more prefer. That feels better. Okay. This will continue going this way. And let's start bridging some of these gaps here. And let's see which way I can go here and still keep it. Oops, didn't want to do that. Still want to keep this nice quads. Let's bring that here. Recombine those. Let's introduce one more here. Here we go. We'll bring this up. So as you can see, there's a wealth of ways that I can go about doing all this. My first pass is never perfect, but once I get a pass going that's almost complete, then I'll go in and just retrofit stuff. So let's just focus on getting it done for now, and we'll go in and fine tune it later. And as we look at your guys' meshes together, we'll make sure to spend a lot of time making sure that it's as appropriate as we can get it. So don't feel stressed about having it right the first time. Okay, so I'm kind of just looking at some of these features here and saying, where can I basically do like some clever stuff here. Let's go down here, and you can see that I still have all this that needs to kind of run through. So I'm going to try to find a good solution for this. Let's bring this down. I think I'm going to go with this type of thing here. Now, quad draw can be very finicky about position of your cursor when you're trying to create that new polygon. So if you make sure, if you get frustrated that it's not creating the exact polygon you want, you may just have to go in there and kind of fool around with it a little bit. All right, now you can see that all kind of resolved nicely there. I don't think I like this. I kind of want this to flow with that nostril, so I'm going to get rid of this. Get rid of this one and oops. And this little face right in here. Okay, and let's just make like a nice flow here. So let's go. That will go there. That will go there. Let's make some more space. So out of necessity, I'll add more resolution, but really only out of necessity. I don't want to just arbitrarily do it for no good reason. But here, what I'm trying to accomplish is just a ring that flows right along with that nostril. That's just going to work much nicer when I'm trying to shape that crease right there. There'll be a few scenarios like that for you guys in your models where you want to really follow the flow. All right, let's work our way up here now. And now let's start thinking about this brow. So clearly I got this very strong shape. I'm going to try to follow that whole path here. Like literally follow this trajectory I've made in the shape and just try to make it a built-in feature with my topology. Come around this way. So you can see I'm just trying to really map everything together here. Fairly straightforward process. It might be a little intimidating in the beginning, but really it's just something to get used to more than anything else. Now we're starting to get something forming here. That's pretty good. Let's start building this out as well. Yeah, I'm quite digging that. Okay. So here you can see I got a need to add, let's see, 1 and 2 spans. That'll work good. Let's introduce those. Get these marked in. And now we just have to fill in these blanks here. So I'm going to do something along the lines of this right here. But you can see very quickly we start filling in this space. Pretty good. Now this is essentially a recap from a lot of the stuff we did last term in regards to the models you guys did. But what I really want to be diligent with for this term is to really think about the topology a little more in depth, a little more production worthy. So I'm going to spread out the points at the edge of our mesh here. Let's just get all this stuff kind of organized nicely. And then the reason I'm only focusing the outer border is because I will go in here and relax everything on the interior. So that's feeling pretty good there. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to introduce you to the next great feature of Quadro, which is basically a way to relax all of these points so I don't have to manually go in here and start moving stuff around. If I hold down Shift, I can go in and just start kind of brushing over my topology, and it'll do a really nice job of just averaging stuff out. Now you want to be a little careful because you see how it can get a little destructive on your mesh. So make sure you're kind of exercising it little by little. it does a better job if you have more resolution. So if this mesh was a little bit denser, it would have more to work with, and so the effect of it wouldn't be as strong. Because this is fairly light, it's kind of pulling at it pretty hard here. So you want to be a little gentle with it. So I'm trying to make sure it preserve this little area for myself here. So I might give myself one more edge right here, as well as here. And anytime I introduce more, I try to make sure I go in and like really spread that stuff out. And this for me is one of those parts of the tool that's just like mind-blowing. It's like, man, this is so cool that you can work like this. Back in the day, we had to do this more manual, and that really was not fun. So let's give a little more resolution in here. I'm going to drop one right here. And let's also drop one. You know what? I'm going to move this over. I'm going to put one here and here. So you can see I'm starting to really make this a healthier mesh. Let me just back up and see how many I added there. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. So for over here, we'll do 1, 2, and the third one, let's put the third one. It doesn't matter. We can maybe do it right here. Just make sure you spread this stuff out. And then once you spread it out, then I'll go in and relax. It's feeling pretty good. You could also kind of do a little fall off. If you hit B on the keyboard, you can drag out a fall off. What's nice about that is it'll just do a nice little fall off radius to that relax function. If you want to turn that off, just hit B again. So you can see B toggling it on and off. It's feeling pretty good. Now let's fill in some of these blanks here as far as the mouth and nostrils are concerned, and then we'll talk about how to treat the remainder of the eyelids. So I'm going to continue on over here. Let's build out the lips. So as you can imagine, lips is straightforward at this point. We're really just following the trajectory of the sculpt. Just make sure you get it as accurate as you can. And the other thing is we don't want to have a welded line there because, you know, the mouth has to open, right? So kind of treat it as such. You can see that where it gets a little tight in here, I may want to help myself out by moving some points around. Let's see if it'll play nice. Sometimes you got to really help it. There we go. So you see how I had to move that out just to get that to cooperate there. But so far, so good. So I'm not keeping track of the length of time in this recording, but I'm guessing we're running at around an hour or something right now. So let's go for a little bit longer. And we will talk about something else here in a second. Add one more here. Now, what's interesting is I don't think we need this many on the bottom here. So let me remove this. And I'm also going to remove this one. Yeah, we didn't need all that. Okay, that's good. And now let's just make sure that the edges and everything is all kind of flowing nicely. So keep that edge open. Don't close that, okay? A little relaxing. Okay. It's feeling pretty good on there. If I just quickly exit quad draw for a second, I'm going to duplicate this mesh. I'm going to move it over. That's what we essentially have right now. We have something that, you know, as you can see, is following the form really, really nicely. We haven't even smoothed it yet. If I hit smooth right now, you'll start to get a pretty good representation of your model, even though it doesn't have all the minor details just yet. That's pretty much in the ballpark where we want to be. So let's go a little bit further with this. I'm going to select this mesh again, make it live. We'll spend about 10 more minutes on this. Select your quad draw mesh, activate quad draw. Let's give a little more res along this area. And we'll even maybe add one more right around here. So as you can see, I'm being pretty healthy with the resolution, but I'm controlling it. I'm trying not to let it get away from me too much. Now, one thing I haven't done right now is I haven't saved yet, so I should probably do so. Same goes for you guys as you're working. Make sure you're saving regularly with this stuff. So let's do File, Save Scene. I haven't saved at all. So we'll call this Batman Retopo. All right. Okay, so I've done quite a bit of isolated work just to the face. What about everything else, you're probably asking? So let's kind of get started with that stuff. I'm going to turn on Quad Draw. And let's start first with the scalp. So what I'm going to basically do is do these really big polygons. And then we're just going to kind of work everything in together. So I will start bridging this all the way toward the back. Just like so. And what I want to do is have as many of these edges run up around the middle as I can. So I might do like a nice, let's see if I can get that squared away. Something like this right here is roughly what I'm going for. So you can see that any edges I introduce in this area, they're all just going to flow right around the back of the scalp, which is good. That's what we want. And then, of course, anything that we get right over here is just running down there. So now let's start connecting the dots. So hopefully this is kind of painting a picture of how to navigate this stuff. It's really not too bad. One thing to also take note, if you ever feel like your quad draw session is starting to get slow, what you may need to do there is remove history of the mesh for the quad draw. So for example, let me exit quad draw. If I select the mesh, go to my channel box, look at all that history. Holy smokes, that's crazy. So let's delete history. I'll go to edit, delete by type, history. Now there's nothing there. If I go back to my modeling toolkit, turn on quad draw, it's going to be much more responsive. Like now I can just really fly through it. So just something for you guys to consider. as you're working. So as I do these kind of broad blanket passes of topology, now I'll go in and, make sure that you're relaxing this stuff as often as you need to so that it really maintains a nice, even placement. Like you can see, that mesh starts to feel pretty nice. Let's go down here. We're going to start building out the jaw. So I'm just going to follow this jaw line or neckline, whatever you want to call it. This stuff here definitely is just going to work its way down like this. But here it starts to get a little crowded. So what's going to end up happening is some of this stuff is going to loop back under itself. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. So we got to first determine which are going to be those edges that loop underneath. Let's make our center line. That'll make it easy to determine. So I am guessing it's probably going to be let's say from here going through. So we'll cut through there, create this one and this one as well, and this one, and then maybe these just come down. Let's just do it like that. That feels pretty good. So now, with that done, let's go ahead and relax that. So again, you can see the relaxing in action really does help maintain what we're trying to do there. It's feeling pretty good. Now let's continue building out. You guys are probably really curious about the ear, so let me show you how I treat the ear. Really no different from anything else. We're going to be very simple about this. I'm going to first follow the path of whatever you have in your shape, and I'm hoping most of you have a simple ear. As you can see here, there's just enough information to keep this ear, somewhat interesting, but I'm really not trying to do anything too crazy with it. So I'm just following all that detail. And I'm just going to keep going all the way around here. And this way, it makes it easy to kind of just understand, all right, where am I trying to go with this detail? Just keep everything really easy to control. And of course, we'll start building out in this direction. We'll probably end up having more resolution coming off the face to really help this. One thing I'm going to be really careful of here is I'm not going to weld everything together, because as you can see, there's parts of the sculpt that weren't welded together, and that makes it a little tricky to retopologize. So I have to kind of be a little particular with where I place these points. So maybe when I have something like this, I'll just go and just kind of weld this stuff. Just like that. Yeah, that feels fairly good. Let me go ahead and relax this one. In fact, I'm going to undo that for 1 second because I didn't want the line to be there. Let's get rid of this one. Let's place it here. That's where we want it to be. Okay. And now let's relax this a little bit. Go over here, relax. Okay. Now let's come back here and just continue. So as you can see, just trying to find ways to connect the dots here. Don't be afraid to add more resolution as you're working. If that helps it solve itself, do it. So that's feeling pretty good as far as like a general pass here. Let's go ahead and continue moving this stuff out. So I'm almost treating it a little bit like a radial patch, but not too much, just enough to really isolate things. If for whatever reason it starts to get slow, just again, like I mentioned, check the history and just make sure you're not getting too heavy with that. Now we do try to do as much as we can within quad draw, but if at some point you kind of feel like, you know what, it'll be easier for me to work out a certain area just within Maya's modeling tools, don't be afraid to do that as well. So I think right here, I'm gonna bring that there. There we go. I think I like that better. Is it gonna let me connect the dots here? Let's see. Let's see if it'll play nice. So you can see that right here, it's really being difficult with how it's letting me bridge between these two. If that happens, you may have to move things around yourself. I might even just have to delete that area and try it again. There we go. Okay, so that worked once I deleted it, just to kind of give a clean slate there. Go right here and start. Continue building the ear. So you can see I take my time with the ear. I'm really trying to look at it from every which angle. It's important not to rush. Coming around this way. And this, I believe, is going to work pretty good. Let's introduce one more edge right there, and that'll allow us to bridge right here. The other thing I want to preach, there's no one way. You know, I mean, I can solve this ear numerous different ways. Doesn't have to be just the way that I'm doing it here. But if it feels good, then leave it. You know, I'm digging that. I think that feels a pretty good solution there. Let's go over here, back into the ear. And let's try to finish out some of this additional detail here. So some of this stuff is resolving pretty nicely, which is making me happy. Start filling in these blanks. All right, it's working out. Let's go ahead and drop in maybe one more right there. I think we'll place one right there. Oops, what did I do there? One right here. And now let's remove this one. Here we go. And then we can just kind of bridge this all together. Do one more up here too. There we go. So you can see, you know, even for myself, like it kind of got to go through here and think about it a little bit, just to make sure I'm doing the best possible arrangement I can. I'm fairly happy with this. I mean, this is working out okay. There is something here that I'm not quite crazy about. And I think it's just simply combining these points here. So that's what I'm going to do. I love how easy quad draw just kind of welds things together when you drag them next to each other. That's a really nice feature that it has, as you can see me doing right here. Okay, so we got that ear squared away pretty good as far as the front's concerned. Now the back is really more of the same. I'm going to look through here and see what's the easiest thing to do as far as wrapping this ear up. Let me come back here, make a little path. So for those of you that are a little worried about the ear or intimidated by it, just remember, like, mine is probably a little more complex than most of yours are. Take your time, follow the form, okay? And as long as you're doing that, as long as you're being honest to the shape and crafting your topology to really just follow it, you'll be okay. You'll be okay with it. That's working out pretty good back here. Nice and simple topology. The only thing that's becoming kind of complex for me more than anything is just the real estate is tight here. You know, it's really hard for me to get where I need to be. And that's about the only thing that's tough here. So I will try to do it all in quad draw if I can. It's feeling pretty good. Okay, so we're just about there with the ear. And our next order of business is really going to be just to tie everything back into the scalp here. Now I'm going to actually pull this back a little bit because I think even in my sculpt there's just too much space there, which I don't want. So let's bring that back just a touch. And all the rest of this stuff is probably just going to run its way back into the scalp. Let's come down to the neck real quick. I'm going to save. As far as the neck's concerned, again, just first things first, follow the actual features that you have. Most of you are going to have very simple topology, or I mean, not simple topology, but very simple features. You know, it should just be a nice, clean neck. Only a couple of you have something muscular, so there's not going to be any need to do anything too crazy. But in this particular case, I'm out of necessity. I kind of want to follow the path of the sternomastoid here, and just a little bit of the built-in anatomy. All right, I'm getting somewhere here, little by little. It's feeling pretty good. Let's do something for a middle here. So I got 1, 2 that I need to carry through. I don't know that I'm going to do that exactly. I think what we'll end up doing here is working those through the middle, kind of like this. There you go. Kind of helps me get an Adam's apple too as well. All right, so looking again at the geometry here, let me go ahead and save this. Again, it becomes an effort of just kind of going around, looking at the features and really trying to do something that follows the flow of everything. You go a little bit further over here. And then I think we're going to wind this down pretty quick. So thanks for watching this whole thing. I just think it's important for you guys to have something to kind of revert back to and watch if you need to. And the back here of the ear got a little complex for my liking, but still not bad. I'm going to introduce one more edge right here. And I'll go ahead and close that. Let me see if I can get it to close the way I want. There we go. Did it give it to me? It did, but it flipped it. Let me see if it will do it this time. There we go. That's what I wanted. And now with this, I'll just kind of move that in. Move this one as well. All right. That'll work. Let's close off that. And we are just about done with the head as far as the general pass. There will be some finessing that we'll do a little bit later. But in a nutshell, we just about got here. So let's try to do a real quick blanket of topology to finish off this neck. I'm going to remove history real quick. Turn quad draw back on. Now let's just do some big polygons here in the back. Same thing up here. Almost there, guys. Now I'm just doing some really big polygons here just to try to blanket this neck as best I can. And we'll start adding in some res so we can start bridging across here. Again, don't be shy with the res because remember we're going to relax. We're going to relax it once it's placed. Okay. So now I have all that. Let's go in here, give a little bit of res to this. Now, this all here can change at some point. For right now, we're going to leave it like this. Let me just give it a real quick relax. As you can see, not too bad. Not too bad for a quick pass on the head. Let me save this. And if I select this, let me turn off that. Let's duplicate this. I'll move it over. Let's see what we got. Again, it's not meant to be smooth just yet, but as you can see, that is pretty clean topology compared to what we started with. And we have something that's really coming together as far as resolution and topology is concerned. So we'll continue forth with this a little bit later. For now, I'm going to stop this recording and hope that was useful. Okay, guys.